Welcome to the Dan Casper Show podcast, your chance to catch the full show anytime, anywhere. If you missed it live on the radio, no worries. We've got you covered with all the sports talk, opinions, interviews, and conversations from the show. From the Packers to the Brewers to the biggest stories in sports and around Wisconsin, it's all right here. This is the Dan Casper Show podcast. All right, second hour, kick it off right now on this Tuesday morning. Appreciate you tuning in wherever, however you are tuning in from, whether it's on the radio dials of 105.1 FM, 790 AM. You can also check us out online at sportstalk1051.com. YouTube video stream is also up and rolling here this morning. We're going to talk some more baseball throughout the morning because we are getting set for opening day tomorrow for the Brew Crew. All right, so we'll hit that up. Also, we'll talk some hoops. Bucks back in action coming up here in just a little bit. Later on, we're going to do our kickoff, our Packers draft prospects countdown. A little bit different this year because they don't have that first round pick. So we'll take a. It's going to be day 2, round 3 prospects and such. So we'll take a look at different players, and we'll do our best to try to hit up on everybody. Might do 1 or 2 each day leading up to the draft and such. But we'll kick that off today. Now that we are a little under a month from the start of the draft, so. We got that coming up. It is a Mike's Star Market. Tell me I'm wrong. It is a Hy-Vee game changer. So let me know who your game changers are. All right. Let me know who your game changers are. Could be like a game that maybe changed your bracket. Maybe you feel worse about your bracket. Maybe you feel great about your bracket. All that stuff. All right. So let us know. Hit me up with a text, 715-830-1912, or again, you can join in on the YouTube chat room, the Section 105 group over there. So, hoops-wise, let's just kind of talk a little hoops here as the Bucks are back in action and such. And yes, they've got the Portland Trail Blazers tonight, but that's not the big thing here because yesterday, the Players Association for the NBA. Coming out with a statement rebuking the Bucks with the whole Giannis situation, because there was a report that the Bucks wanted to shut down Giannis for the rest of the year. Giannis doesn't want to sit down, according to Shams from ESPN last week. I know Bucks fans, but just relaying what was out there. But Shams said last week that Giannis refused the Bucks' request to sit out for the remainder of the season. And in a statement yesterday, the Players Association said, quote, the player participation policy was designed by the league to hold teams accountable and ensure that when an all-star like Giannis Antetokounmpo is healthy and ready to play, he is on the court. Unfortunately, anti-taking policies are only as effective as their enforcement. Fans, broadcast partners, and the integrity of the game itself will continue to suffer as long as ownership goes unchecked. We look forward to collaborating with the NBA on meaningful new proposals that will directly address and discourage tanking. So I get the Players Association coming out and saying this. I understand it, and I understand. We all, the load management thing with the NBA. We all have issues with that. I mean, it's something that has crossed my mind many times. Wanting to take my kid to a Bucks game or to a T-Wolves game or wherever. It's like, Giannis going to be sitting out this one. Anthony Edwards going to be sitting out on this one? Because if they are, I'll be really upset. You know what I mean? It's like I paid a lot of money to go watch these stars. And it's like, oh, they're going to have an off day today. So, and I get the whole tanking thing and that. It's although the Bucks are, Probably not going to get the number one pick, but if they do, all right, first of all, that'd be awesome as a Bucs fan, but probably not going to happen and such. So I get the Players Association coming out and saying this, and I think, if it wasn't out there that Giannis refused it, you're probably not hearing from the Players Association. You're probably not getting a statement from the Players Association. But at the same time, let's be a little common sense with this thing here, too. There's 11 games left to go. Okay. Right? 11. Around a dozen, a little less than a dozen. Lost track now. The guy has been hurt quite a bit this year. He has been banged up, whether it's been knee injuries, whether it's been hamstring, Achilles, whatever. He has been banged up a lot. Let's use a little common sense with this thing here, too. I appreciate Giannis wanting to play. And as a fan, yeah, I want to see him on the court just in case he is not going to suit up in a Bucs uniform ever again. I'd like to see it just one more time with the thought like, yep, this could be it. But, let's use some common sense here. There's nothing really to play for. He is a fantastic player, one of the best players in the game. And whether it's because you want to make sure that he's healthy as all can be for next year for your team, or as healthy as all could be when it comes to a potential trade so you get the most in return, you have to look at it from a business side in this aspect. Let's use a little common sense here. Okay? Is it for tanking that the Bucs are sitting Giannis out? Honestly, maybe there's a little part of it to help improve or solidify their draft status. But for crying out loud, they weren't even winning games when he was out there. So can we just use a little common sense in this thing? I don't think there's any big-time ulterior motives in this. And in fact, I think if you polled a lot of Bucs fans, they'd probably be like, yeah, we get it. Yeah, we understand if he sits or you shut him down. You might as well. What is there? Honestly, I don't know if a lot of fans would be upset. Maybe fans that have tickets to go to the games and want to see him. Yeah, then I 100% would be, upset on that too. But I think if you asked a lot of people, it would be, hey, we get it. We understand it. It's part of the business. And it'd be one thing if, like, Giannis hadn't missed a lot of time beforehand, right? If he had been playing a lot of games and all of a sudden this just kind of popped up, and then it's like, well, that's weird now that the thing is, too, the NFL does this, right? I mean, we've seen this in the NFL. Granted, not as many games. I understand that. You're talking about maybe 1 or 2 games a week, but we have seen it in the NFL. And, we've seen it where teams out. All right, was it 20? What year was it? Was it 2018? Somewhere around. It happened a couple. No, not 2018. I think it was one other year, 2016, whatever it was. But Aaron Rodgers came back. Packers were out of playoff contention. So the last 2 games, nope, you're done. We're sitting you down. And I get it, maybe a little different scenarios. You knew Rodgers was going to be back next year and this, that, and the other thing. And, a little bit more of a violent sport and such. But, what would happen if, and this is the risk that you have to do. I understand that. This is the risk you'd have to take. It's like that with all sports. But, okay, Giannis comes back. Tears his Achilles, tears his ACL. Look what happened last year, right? All those star players tearing their ligaments and muscles at the end of the year, and now they're done. And Giannis is the interesting situation of if he gets hurt where it would affect his next season, whether it's for play or whether it's, for him to be on the court for the Bucs or maybe for a trade point. Ugh. There's so many ways you can look at this, and it's just, I think we got to use a little common sense with this thing. And that's what I think the Bucs are trying to do, honestly. I don't have a whole lot of positive stuff to say, but about the Bucs ownership and about how the Bucs have ran things this year. But I think at this point, they want to shut him down for the rest of the year. They have a valid point. All right, let's take a quick break. Before that, though, let's catch up on a couple texts. Mark says the most important Brewer is Contreras. He has to handle all those young pitchers to make them successful. Also needs to produce at the plate. Can't have injuries to him. Josh says 0 expectations for Yelly, just icing on the cake. If he has a good year, I think Chiriot just needs to be really good like he was last year at the beginning of the year, which probably, if he stays healthy, if he stays healthy, get them out of the All-Star game, and then Miz doesn't need to necessarily dominate, but just needs to be good. All right, keep those coming. All right, keep your texts coming with that. We'll get back to some more Brewers chats coming up a little bit later on, but we got to take a quick break, and we'll be right back in just a couple minutes. Pain doesn't have to slow you down, and at Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, their experienced team is focused on getting you back to doing what you love, whether that's competing on the field or staying active or simply moving without discomfort. From joint pain and sports injuries to advanced surgical and non-surgical treatments, they provide personalized care designed around you. Local experts, advanced techniques, real results. If pain is holding you back, take the next step towards recovery. Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, helping you move better every single day. All right. We've got NFL owners meetings coming our way here and such, and we're starting to get a little bit of some reports on some potential rule changes and such. So playing rules summaries, kind of a few of them that have popped up and maybe piqued my interest or kind of like really popped up there. We'll get to those coming up here in just a little bit here. So we'll get back to some of your texts here too. So we'll bring in Joe. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, sir. I like the Brewer garb. And I got to tell you, there is nothing better than the blue and yellow Brewer hats. Mm-hmm. And so you are looking very Harvey Keene-esque. You're looking very Paul Molitor-esque. Mm-hmm. So I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
It looks good.
Appreciate that.
Well, of course, man. Yeah. Of course. It is. There's nothing better. And I remember, obviously, the old Milwaukee County Stadium. For me, being in college in the 80s, my buddies and myself, we would head over opening day, a tradition like no other. And, of course, no dome back in the day. Mm-hmm. And a lot of 30-degree days on opening day for me. But opening day, how can you not be excited?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Everybody's got optimism for that time. So.
Yeah, you know what? And I think Pat Murphy is part of the big reason why, regardless of what's happening with the acquisitions or trades or whatever happens the offseason, I think that Brewer fans believe in Pat Murphy. And I think that the Brewers continually prove the critics wrong. And so, I think, I think somebody listed them 81 over-under as far as wins go. I'll take the over on that one.
Yeah. I'm not making my picks yet, so
All right.
That tomorrow. So.
You're going to do that, October 1st?
No, tomorrow, I said.
Okay.
So.
Good.
So we're now officially less than a month away from the NFL draft.
By the way, I heard you earlier. So. It's weird getting into draft mode with no first-round pick.
It is, but I kind of like it, to be honest
too.
With you. So
yeah, I do too.
It takes a little less stress off, anyways. But I like day 2 anyway, so that's my favorite day of the draft.
Yeah,
I like rounds 2 and 3.
Yeah. Look, I think that's where Super Bowl champions can be made. Mm-hmm. If you hit it in round 2, round 3. And if you look back at some of the Green Bay Super Bowl teams, 97 and, of course, and then 2011, and you look at the second and third round picks that were on those teams, and, of course, yes, you had Brett Favre, which you traded at number 1 for. You had Aaron Rodgers, who you drafted in the first round. But you look at some of those other guys who became players, they don't win those Super Bowls without those second and third round picks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. So I know not a whole lot going on right now in terms of free agency and such, yep. And, not a whole lot of movement at this point in time, but we've got owners meetings, coming up and some playing rules, potentially laws changing and all that sort of stuff. I mean, we'll see if The tush push has been pretty quiet, though, so it sounds like that's going to stay around here for a hot minute.
Yeah, so. I think, Green Bay took the fall last year and was put up front to try to get that thing banned. But, who knows? I mean, the owners' meeting, I think the biggest thing for me with the owners' meetings is traditionally this is when you'll hear a little bit more from Brian Gutekunst on how the offseason has gone. So it'll be interesting. You'll hear probably talking to LaFleur at that point and hearing about the offseason. So I always look forward to this because it is that first round of free agency is done. You still have a few weeks before the draft, and you get some Packer news, maybe some quotes, maybe some things like that from Goody and the like. And so, it'll be interesting to see what he feels about this offseason so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so last week, too, we also, during the Badger game, I got the Packers making their coaching staff official and such. And maybe one of the things that popped up was Covington being moved from defensive line coach to outside linebackers coach, which probably is a hint that base is going to be a 3-4 style defense. Would you agree with that?
I would totally agree. I would totally agree. And of course, outside linebacker, and I believe he also got the title as assistant head coach. Mm-hmm. And so
defense.
Yes, and assistant defensive coordinator, whatever you want to call it. So, I think that says a lot. I think Jonathan Gannon has made no bones about the fact that he prefers that as a base. I think you go back now and look at some of the current players. First of all, I think Micah Parsons will be fine. I don't see him having any issues making a move to that outside backer position. I think, again, you look at guys like Lucas Van Ness. Now, he's gone back and forth and flip-flop between 3-4 and 4-3. So we'll see where he comes into play, and we'll see where Green Bay goes in the draft as far as that goes. But I thought it was a statement without making a statement with the Covington move.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, I agree. And I know some people had problems with why is there so many assistant head coach titles and such? I'm like, don't get involved. Don't let that bother you, right? I mean, it's just a title for crying out loud at that point. Right. I mean, Luke Getsy got assistant head coach offense sort of thing.
Right.
Maybe they're involved a little bit more with game planning or helping out in other roles, but I'm not going to get all wound up about that.
Well, a couple of things. I think if LaFleur truly is looking for more game day help, I think that's a good thing, first and foremost. Secondly, you put a title like that on someone, maybe that prohibits them from taking what might be considered a parallel move with another club. And so you're protecting yourself. You're protecting yourself, and also you're you're empowering some of these assistant coaches. So, I didn't have any issue with it. I have to say I like what happened with LaFleur and his staff. My only question still is Butkus and Steno. Those are my really only big question marks. And really, more importantly, I think it's Butkus. I think that Steno was an absolutely incredible offensive line coach, and the jury still is out on his OC skills, but also we all know that Matt LaFleur truly is the OC of this football team. So I don't think it's as critical when you look at Steno, and I know the grades came out, and Steno got a low grade, and et cetera, but I'm more concerned about the development of that offensive line because right now you're looking at Jordan Morgan at left tackle. You're looking at Sean Ryan at center. You're looking at Anthony Belton at that right guard. And of course, you have Banks and you have Tom. They're veterans. I'm more concerned about the development of the younger guys on that offensive line. And that's really going to rest on Butkus's shoulders. Developing an offensive line, that O-line coach is so critically important. So, again, I like where the staff went. My only question was that offensive line coach position. The Covington thing, I think, said a lot to me as far as the future. And I'm actually excited going back to the defensive side of the ball. I just think when you're drafting for guys, I think Lucas Van Ness was drafted as a 3-4 guy. So I think it's going back to the roots a little bit.
And I was going to bring back Lucas Van Ness with the 3-4 if it is and I think we're going to have elements of both. I don't think it's going to be straight up Don Capers 3-4 style there. But, now it's, okay, maybe another shift in philosophy for Lucas Van Ness. You talk about he started off, standing up. Then he goes back to his hand in the dirt. Now you're talking about standing back up. I mean, he's a younger player who we still, I think, are a little bit unfamiliar with. Could this, again, hurt kind of his development a little bit?
No doubt. No question it can. But I almost think that this move leans into his strength more.
Mm-hmm.
I think just looking at the growth and development early on in his career and almost the step back he took kind of that second phase of his career. And then I think he came on last year a little bit more. So yeah, I think I'm excited for Lucas Van Ness. I think Packer fans are full of angst because obviously there's a couple of guys that the Packers could have picked with that pick rather than LVN. One JSN comes to mind as far as that goes. But again, I'm excited to see him. I think you look at Micah Parsons and the way he responded to Lucas Van Ness last year. I think he sees something in him, and so yeah, I think this move might lean into the strengths a little bit, and also flip it over. In a 4-3, you need a true Mike. You need a true Mike middle linebacker. Mm-hmm. In a 3-4, you do not. You don't need that thumper in the middle. So I think this leans into the strengths of that Green Bay linebacking core as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, so the interesting part too is if it's with that, does Edgerrin Cooper go inside? I mean, do you have the flexibility? Is it him and Zaire Franklin? Does that limit him a little bit because he's a great rusher too?
No, I think you open up some opportunities there. Mm-hmm. In a 3-4, you can do more mix and matching, I think, in those positions. And so I think this might free up Edgerrin Cooper to be more of that guy that can be a jack of all trades, where you don't know if he's dropping into coverage. You don't know if he's rushing the passer. So I think you can mix and match a little bit. And I think it opens up some flexibility where, you could see him maybe in some packages playing an outside backer. So I think a 3-4 gives linebackers a little bit more freedom. I think it gives them a little bit more show to show their athleticism, a stage to show their athleticism. So I like a 3-4 for Edgerrin Cooper. I think it leans into his strengths, and I'm excited to see what Gannon can do with him.
I think that would also help for me, because last year I think when he was drafted, we were like, where's he playing as a guy like Colin Oliver? Mm-hmm. He's got the linebacker body, but he's a great pass rusher. Right. And everybody's like, how does he fit in a 4-3? This would seem to better utilize that type of player.
Yeah, it's interesting. You look at Barron Sorrell and Oliver, mm-hmm. two guys who I think fit that 3-4 outside backer mold a lot more than a 4-3 defensive end. So it's almost like Goody and the staff was saying, well, we might lose Hafley.
Yeah.
We might want to draft some guys who can play that 3-4. So yeah, the draft last year, especially those positions, they drafted 3-4 guys. They did not draft 4-3 guys who are bigger, put their hand in the dirt, play that defensive end. So, yeah, I think guys like that.
And even Byron Cox.
Absolutely.
Or Brenton Cox.
Brenton Cox.
Yeah. Going way back with Byron Cox.
I was like, they got Brian Cox.
Well, Brenton Cox, I mean, he's got that athleticism and speed that you would think would fit in a 3-4.
Right. So, and Aaron Mosby, who the Packers re-signed as well. So I think that they've got some guys, and again, depending on what happens with Micah Parsons to start the year, some of these guys you're going to be counting on. Mm-hmm. And so they need to take that next step. And so again, I liked the coming to move. I liked the 3-4 migration.
Mm-hmm. So if it is, let's just kind of say 3-4 base and, all that sort of stuff, is the biggest need then that gap-eating nose tackle on this team?
Yeah, I don't think it's the biggest need, but is it a need? Absolutely. I still think cornerback, when I start looking at my draft board now, I'm starting to look at that cornerback position as truly that number one concern for me. Mm-hmm. Now again, I think they've got some guys there that can compete. Keyshawn Nixon obviously is going to be back. Carrington Valentine's going to be back. So they've got some guys there, but I think I think when you look at the draft board, I think you go after that cornerback position in round 2. I think you address the defensive line position in round 3 and 4. Mm-hmm. And so that's how at least my board's shaken out. But again, I think, and why am I drawing a blank? Signed from Minnesota?
Hargrave.
Yes, yeah. Hargrave. Mm-hmm. So I think right now you got a guy that he's not going to give you 80% snaps just because he's getting up there. But I think you got a guy that can be a rotational guy, so the pressure's a little bit more off drafting a guy that high. Mm-hmm. Do you have to find someone? Yeah. Do we have to know about Devontae Wyatt's health? Yes, absolutely. But I think it's still a big-time need, but I think if I were to rank him right now, I'm looking at that cornerback still being number one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just...
Those top two easily, probably.
Yeah. Right. I think you have to throw offensive line in there because I think you always have to throw offensive line in there. I think Green Bay drafts a quarterback this year. And I also think tight end might be a sneaky need in this draft for the Green Bay Packers. So, as I'm looking at some of the names that Green Bay is associated with, there are some guys that are already I'm looking at and saying they could fit this defense. But I think those first three picks, I think Green Bay has to look at cornerback, defensive line, and probably offensive line at that point. You can never have too many offensive linemen. So I think building that depth there and trying to find some guys that you can plug and play on the defensive side, on the defensive line specifically. Yeah, I think those are. I think this is more of a need draft for the Green Bay Packers rather than best player available.
Going back to JSN, one of the happiest guys in the world, Christian Watson, after that contract for Jackson Smith.
No doubt. No doubt. Because and again, I think you and I had talked about this, that you'll probably see the Watson and Kraft moves after June 2 when they get a little bit more flexibility because of the Nate Hobbs situation. But there's no doubt. And I think both Watson and Kraft deserve that new contract. And so I think those are probably the next bigger moves outside of the draft that you see Green Bay pull the trigger on. But yeah, JSN, look, he was talked about as the most NFL-ready player coming out of Ohio State, receiver coming out of Ohio State in a long time. And so I think he just proved everyone right from draft day that the guy's a player, and his route running ability is just something that you just can't put a price tag on.
Right.
And the ability to get home or to get open, and run all of the route tree against man or zone, it's invaluable.
Right. Yeah. And the trickle down effect of that too. Even Jaden Reed, the price tag for all those receivers goes up
doubt,
too.
Because Jaden Reed, he's going into his last year of his deal. You've got Dontavian Wicks going in the last year of his deal. It's interesting when you see the dominoes fall where Green Bay puts its focus and emphasis on. But, yeah, I think Watson and Kraft and probably Wyatt are your next guys that you try to lock up for the future.
Where does running back go on the list of priority for when it comes to draft? Because right now, Marshawn Lloyd's the backup with Chris Brooks, and we have not seen Marshawn Lloyd. I mean, that's putting a lot of eggs in that basket.
Yeah, I like Green Bay looking in that fifth round-ish for a running back. I also see that could be one of those guys they sign later in the year, that they go out and get someone who is familiar with this offense, who can play a backup role. Look, Josh Jacobs, the majority of his yards last year came after contact.
Yeah.
And so, this is a guy that's got some tread on the tires. So you need to protect yourself. I thought Emmanuel Wilson really did a nice job playing that role behind him. I don't disagree at all, though, with Chris Brooks being the priority over Emmanuel Wilson. If you look at the way that guy does blitz pickup, he's incredible.
I don't think he gave up a sack, I think the stat was.
He is incredible.
Is he like your old school Tony Fisher third down back?
Yeah. I mean, something along those lines. I think a little bit more reliable in the pass blocking game. But yeah, one of those guys that just does the job, and you really, really appreciate. You don't appreciate in the game. You appreciate when you watch the tape. Because all of a sudden you're like, oh, man, Love never gets that off if Chris Brooks doesn't pick up that blitzer.
Right.
It's that type of thing where you say, wow. And look, it's that role player mentality that you need in football to win football games and ultimately to win championships. And so, a real quick question before we go. Did you get to see a lot of the interviews or a lot of the action from the Bob Harlan funeral?
Yeah. I think it's so cool. And I was talking about this the other day. Mike McCarthy coming back. And still, the relationship he has with the franchise has with him, I think he could have, just kind of passed along or did a video. He's head coach of the Steelers, still comes back. I know his family's from there and he lives there still. Right. And then you go back to the whole, we know he was the coach that Goody probably talked to about Micah Parsons last year.
Yeah, no doubt.
I just think for how it ended, it's really cool to see that connection still between those two.
Big Mike, Big Mike's a good football coach.
Yeah.
and it was just cool to see the tributes coming in for Bob Harlan. It was cool to see, Ron Wolf there. It was cool to see Mike McCarthy there. And again, it's one of those moments. And I believe Harlan, 89 when he passed?
89, 90.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So, and I've often said, first of all, Bob Harlan, when you build the Mount Rushmore, the Green Bay Packers, Harlan's up there.
Mm-hmm.
But it was cool seeing McCarthy. It was cool seeing Ron Wolf. It was cool seeing these figures from the past come back and reminisce and talk about the Green Bay Packers. And it makes you appreciate the franchise just a little bit more. And again, obviously, I thought it was interesting. Kevin Harlan, with the journalist in him, had to throw the question to McCarthy about an Aaron Rodgers, Mike McCarthy reunion, which I'm all for. Mm-hmm. I'm all for. But yeah, it was just it's one of those bittersweet episodes in life where it's sad to see Bob Harlan go, but it's cool to see everyone get together and celebrate his life.
And I'm glad they're putting his name inside Lambeau Field, too, because, Lambeau Field doesn't look that way without Bob Harlan.
No.
Yeah.
No, 53% vote he got wasn't much.
No.
Wasn't much. And I guarantee you the door-to-door politicking he did for that, I don't know if Green Bay would be here today if it weren't for that politicking he did.
Yeah.
And again, quick story. I interviewed for a position with the Packers a long time ago, actually talked with Bob Harlan on the phone. It was right when he was passing the torch to Mark Murphy. He didn't want to make any decisions without Murphy on board. But the fact that Harlan answered the phone when I had sent my resume in and we had a chance to talk for 5-10 minutes, it was actually really cool.
And I've heard that story before, too, with other people. He didn't have a secretary right away, so he answered all the phone call. You don't find a leader in a position like that, which I'm sure there was probably a lot of complaints, too.
Oh, no doubt.
Let's be real.
No doubt.
I don't think I've heard one negative thing about that guy.
Yeah, I thought it was a cool tribute to someone who, if it weren't for the work that he did and the groundwork that he laid, not only the legwork, but also the Ron Wolf hiring, et cetera, Green Bay's not Green Bay today.
Right.
I will go on record as saying Green Bay is not Green Bay today without Bob Harlan.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I thought it was a very cool tribute.
Yep, I do too. So, all right, dude, appreciate it.
One last question, Brewers. You good with Miz starting tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I thought so too.
He pitched in some big moments last year.
Yep.
I know opening day is more of a ceremonial, electric environment and such, but he handled it well. And those Paul Skeens ones, or how the media trumped it up, and then even in the postseason and such. So. I don't know if he was on Pat McAfee yesterday.
I saw that, yeah.
So I'm curious to see what his changeup is going to look like.
Yeah, he said he's been working on it. I tell you what, you throw 102 and you come back and throw 81.
Oh. And then you already have your slider going at 90.
Thankfully, I don't play baseball anymore because there's no way I'd be able to catch up to the heat and then adjust to the changeup if he can control it.
Well, I struggled in BP last week against Varsho throwing BP, so that wasn't quite.
By the way,
80.
you're a brave man for doing that. You are a brave man for doing that.
Hey, I want to do hockey now. I'm going to do some gymnastics.
You are a braver man than I am, sir.
For the content.
Oh my gosh, It's a good piece, and again. I believe I've got just a few years on you. Mm-hmm. So maybe if I was just a few years younger, maybe I'd feel as bold. But nope, when the gray hits and, you can see 60 on the horizon, you say, nope, not for me. Thanks.
Yeah. All right, dude. Appreciate it, man.
All right, Dan. Take care.
We got to take a quick break, but we'll be right back after these few words. When it comes to quality meat, you don't guess. You go right to the experts at Mike Star Market in Eau Claire. You're not just buying meat, but you're buying experience. Hand-cut steaks, fresh ground beef, house-made brats, and sausages, thick-cut chops, done exactly the way you like them. This is your neighborhood butcher shop where quality comes first and service still matters. Planning a cookout, maybe for opening day. Stocking up for the week, maybe stocking up for some brats for baseball season, softball season, or looking for that perfect steak dinner for tonight. You can stop on in to Mike Star Market in Eau Claire and taste the difference that a real butcher makes. Mike's Star Market, fresh, local, and done right. I do got to play a little catch-up here because we're almost at halftime. So we are going to have to take a quick break here in just a few minutes and such. But in case you're just tuning in and such, the first hour we talked a lot of Brewers. So I want your picks for who you think is the most pivotal, crucial Brewers person for the overall success of this season. All right. Can be manager, can be player. Make your picks there. Is year 3 an important year for Jackson Chourio to maybe take another step, maybe to that all-star star status? And how do you view Christian Yelich as a player? Do you view him as a star? Do you view him as just a good player? What's your assessment of Christian Yelich? Let me know. All right. We'll take a quick break here in a couple minutes. Give you some time to text in on that Shoe Doctors bullpen line at 715-830-1912. Or you can hang out in the Section 105 chat room on YouTube. Good morning, Zach. And James, I don't know, but I don't know about the Brewers games. I just know you can always catch them on our station, Sports Talk 105.1 FM and 790 AM. So with that, let's take a quick break as we wrap up the second quarter. We'll be right back in just a couple minutes. If you're in the market for a new or used vehicle, look no further than our good friends at Toyson Ford. At Toyson Ford, they are proud to serve the drivers of the area of the Chippewa Valley with some of the most popular vehicles around Wisconsin and the country. They're committed to giving drivers from across the Chippewa Valley the best in customer service with a top-notch selection of brand-new vehicles to choose from, as well as an extensive inventory of pre-owned vehicles, too. From the moment you step into their showroom, you're more than just a customer. You are an honored guest, and their only aim is to serve your needs to the fullest. So if you're in the market, maybe using a little bit of that tax return for getting a new vehicle, high-quality used vehicle, brand-new vehicle, go visit our good friends at Toyson Ford. You can check them out online at toysonford.net or visit them in person, 1000 Chippewa Crossing Boulevard in Chippewa Falls. All right, just a couple minutes left to the top of the hour. Zach on our Section 105 chat room saying Pat Murphy is the key element for success for the Brewers, and a key player would be Jackson Chourio. Let me throw it back to you, Zach. When it comes to Jackson Chourio, conversation we've been kind of having here a little bit has been, is with him entering his third year, should the bar be a little bit higher? When do we stop saying for Jackson Chourio, age-wise, yes, he is still young, but from a Major League Baseball standpoint, experience standpoint, when do we stop saying he's young? And when do we, because everybody's still kind of, especially when it was the World Baseball Classic and such, they were saying, star in the making or future star, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when do we stop saying that and just kind of like say, all right, now he's the star. Now he's an actual star. Is it this year? Do we see that growth from him this year? Does it have to be this year? Let me know. I'm kind of curious to get your thoughts on one Jackson Chourio. And how do you view Christian Yelich? Do you view him as a star? Do you view him as just a good player? Is he somewhere in between? Does Jackson have to be an all-star this year? Is it time for him to make that jump? Think about it for a little bit and hit me up, okay? Also, send me your Mike Star Markets, am I wrong? And your Hy-Vee game changers. And again, your game changers could 100% be something about your bracket. Maybe it was a loss from a team that completely changed your bracket. So, all right, shot clock's going to cut me off here in just a few seconds. So we'll do that, hit halftime, get back to some more baseball talk. Going to do our Packers prospect countdown, a little different this year. Day 2 picks, round 2, round 3. Now it's early, so these guys could still move and up and down the draft board and such, but as of right now, we're going to hit up some players.